The sky turned the color of ash, the air thick with heat and smoke, and by nightfall, entire landscapes that had stood for centuries were nothing but glowing embers. Southern Europe is enduring one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in its recent history, with vast stretches of land reduced to ash and entire communities forced to abandon their homes. In Spain alone, 14 major fires are burning at the same time, many in rugged, mountainous areas that are difficult for ground crews to reach. Flames have swept across Castile and Leon, Galicia, and parts of Catalonia, propelled by strong southerly winds and searing heat. The scale is staggering. Hundreds of thousands of hectares have been destroyed in just weeks, stripping the land of vegetation, eroding soil, and leaving a charred scar visible even from space. For many villages, these fires are not a distant threat, but a sudden onslaught, arriving with little warning and engulfing homes, farms, and forests in minutes. In Greece, firestorms have erupted near Patras and across the Peloponnese, forcing mass evacuations under an orange haze that blots out the sun. Residents have been seen carrying elderly relatives on their backs, fleeing as sirens wail and embers rain from the sky. In some coastal areas, the only escape has been into the sea, where families wait in waist, deep water to be rescued by boats. The situation in Portugal is no less dire. Rural regions that have already been battling drought for months are now contending with blazes that leap over fire breaks and spread unpredictably. In Turkey and Albania, smaller but equally destructive fires have torched farmland and forests, threatening biodiversity and releasing plumes of smoke that drift far beyond national borders. What makes this wave of wildfires particularly alarming is its geographic reach. From Spain's northwestern provinces to the islands of Greece, from the hills of southern France to the Balkan coast, the fires are striking diverse landscapes, each with its own vulnerabilities. Olive groves, vineyards, pine forests, scrubland are all succumbing to the flames. The loss is not only environmental but deeply cultural. Centuries-old farmhouses, rural chapels, heritage sites are being consumed alongside the natural terrain. Tourism, a lifeline for many of these regions, is taking a severe hit as visitors cancel trips. Ferries are rerouted and hotels are turned into emergency shelters. The displacement of residents is happening on a massive scale. Tens of thousands have been ordered to evacuate, often with just minutes to gather their most essential belongings. Some leave with only the clothes on their backs, watching from a distance as the homes they built or inherited vanish into smoke. Emergency camps and community centers are overflowing, with families sleeping on mats while volunteers deliver food and water. Authorities face the challenge of housing evacuees while also protecting them from the choking air quality that lingers for days after the flames pass. The destruction is compounded by the speed of the fire's advance. In one Spanish blaze, flames consumed 4,000 hectares in a single hour, outpacing firefighting equipment and cutting off escape routes. A combination of bone-dry vegetation, relentless heat, shifting winds has created conditions that allow fires to ignite easily and burn with an intensity that overwhelms even the most experienced crews. The relentless wildfires tearing through southern Europe are being fueled by an extraordinary and prolonged heat wave that has gripped the region for weeks. Temperatures have soared well above 40 degrees Celsius in multiple countries, with some areas in Spain, France, and Portugal exceeding 45 degrees. This heat is not just uncomfortable. It is fundamentally altering the landscape, drying vegetation to the point where it becomes tinder waiting for a spark. Under such extreme conditions, even a small ignition from a cigarette butt, electrical fault, or lightning strike can rapidly evolve into a firestorm. The heat wave has also been accompanied by gusty winds that fan the flames, allowing them to spread with dangerous speed over vast distances. In several cases, firefighters have described the flames as moving faster than vehicles could travel, making containment nearly impossible once a blaze takes hold. The intensity of the heat has been relentless, offering no reprieve during the night. Usually, cooler nighttime temperatures help to slow the spread of wildfires and give exhausted crews a chance to regroup, but in this heat wave, the mercury has remained high even after sunset. Humidity levels have plunged. This means that fires continue to burn with the same ferocity in the dark as they do in the midday sun, creating a nonstop emergency for responders and preventing any meaningful recovery time for affected communities. Such unbroken heat also accelerates the drying of deep-rooted plants, leaving no natural moisture barrier to slow advancing flames. Scientists and meteorologists point to the role of a persistent high-pressure system sitting over southern Europe, trapping hot air and preventing cooler Atlantic breezes from reaching the region. This atmospheric setup, often referred to as a heat dome, has not only kept temperatures dangerously high, but has also intensified drought conditions in many fire-prone areas. Reservoirs are at critically low levels, streams have dried up, and farmland is parched, further limiting the availability of water to fight the fires. In some rural areas, firefighters have been forced to pump water from swimming pools or truck it in from long distances, adding to the strain on already overstretched resources. The heat waves effects extend beyond just creating a dry environment for fires. It also contributes directly to the generation of fire-friendly winds. Hot air rises rapidly and interacts with cooler air masses, creating turbulent gusts. These winds can carry embers kilometers ahead of the main blaze, igniting new fires in areas thought to be safe. In Spain's Castile and León region, spot fires have been reported popping up far from the original burn zones, forcing firefighters to divide their efforts and stretching manpower to the limit. The combination of heat, wind, parched terrain has made this fire season not only more destructive, but also far more unpredictable than in years past. The heat wave has also had a punishing impact on the people tasked with battling these blazes. Firefighters are working in suffocating temperatures while wearing heavy protective gear, increasing the risk of heat exhaustion and dehydration. Medical teams have reported a surge in cases of heat stroke among both emergency workers and evacuees, as well as vulnerable residents who remain in fire-affected areas. The human toll of the wildfires sweeping across southern Europe has been devastating, with lives lost, communities uprooted, and countless individuals facing the trauma of sudden displacement. In Spain, multiple fatalities have been recorded, including volunteer firefighters who perished in the line of duty while trying to contain rapidly advancing blazes. In Turkey and Albania, similar tragedies have unfolded, where firefighters and local residents alike have succumbed to flames or the intense heat radiating from burning landscapes. These losses are deeply felt in small towns and rural villages, where the firefighting crews are often neighbors, friends, or family members of those they serve. The grief is compounded by the fact that many of these deaths occurred during desperate attempts to save others or protect property, underscoring the personal sacrifice and courage that define these frontline efforts. Beyond the loss of life, tens of thousands have been forced to flee their homes, sometimes with only minutes to react. Evacuation orders have been issued across multiple countries, often under chaotic conditions as wind-driven flames shift direction with little warning. In Greece, scenes of residents scrambling to escape have become tragically familiar. Families carrying children and elderly relatives, clutching pets, and driving through thick smoke as orange embers fall like rain. In some coastal regions, the advance of fire toward seaside towns has left no land routes open, forcing evacuees to wade into the sea to be rescued by boats. These dramatic rescues, while successful in many cases, reflect the speed and ferocity of the fires, which have overwhelmed local evacuation infrastructure. The physical displacement has brought with it immense emotional strain. Many evacuees are now living in temporary shelters, gymnasiums, community centers, or schools hastily converted into safe zones, while others rely on the generosity of relatives or strangers. Privacy is minimal, routines are shattered. The uncertainty of not knowing whether their homes have survived weighs heavily on families. Parents struggle to comfort children who have witnessed terrifying scenes of destruction, and older residents mourn the loss of the places where they have spent their entire lives. For farmers, the fires have not only destroyed their houses, but also the land and livestock that are their sole means of income, deepening the sense of hopelessness. Health impacts have emerged as another serious concern. Inhalation of thick, acrid smoke has sent hundreds to hospitals with respiratory problems, especially affecting the elderly, children, and those with pre-existing conditions. Heat stroke and dehydration are common among evacuees and responders, as relentless high temperatures push the human body to its limits. For many survivors, the psychological scars will linger far longer than the physical ones. Mental health professionals warn that the trauma of losing loved ones, homes, livelihoods in such a sudden and violent way can lead to long-term anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder. The wildfires have not only scarred the land, but have also left deep wounds in the social fabric of every community they have touched. Emergency response systems across southern Europe are being tested to their absolute limits as wildfires spread faster and farther than resources can be deployed. In Spain, the sheer number of active fires, many of them in remote, rugged terrain, has forced firefighting agencies to make difficult decisions about where to concentrate their efforts, often leaving some blazes to burn unchecked in order to protect populated areas. Airborne firefighting units, including water, dropping planes and helicopters, are flying constant rotations from sunrise to sunset, but their reach is limited by wind conditions and visibility. On the ground, crews are working in exhausting shifts, digging fire breaks and clearing vegetation to halt the spread, but progress is slow when faced with flames that leap over containment lines in seconds. The European Union has activated its civil protection mechanism, dispatching additional aircraft, equipment, specialist teams from other member states to assist the most affected countries. Greek and Portuguese authorities have received reinforcements from France, Italy, and Croatia, while Spain has benefited from firefighting planes stationed in other EU nations. This level of cross-border cooperation underscores the scale of the crisis. Even with these pooled resources, many fire fronts remain beyond full control. The coordination of such a multinational response is a logistical challenge in itself, involving different languages, equipment standards, and operational protocols. In Greece, more than 18,000 firefighters have been deployed nationwide, a record number for the country. But the constant flare-ups and shifting fire lines have stretched them thin. Rural volunteer brigades have been called in to bolster professional teams, often with minimal training and equipment. In Portugal, where many blazes are burning in areas with limited road access, emergency workers rely on off-road vehicles and even foot patrols to reach ignition points, slowing response times. The need to protect critical infrastructure, such as power lines, hospitals, and water supply systems, further divides resources and complicates strategy. Adding to the difficulty is the strain on water availability. With reservoirs at historically low levels due to prolonged drought, firefighters in several regions have resorted to pumping water from private swimming pools, rivers, even the sea, which can damage equipment due to salt corrosion. In the worst hit areas, water must be transported by truck over long distances, costing valuable time and fuel. Medical and humanitarian services are also working under extreme pressure. Field hospitals have been set up near evacuation centers to treat smoke inhalation, burns, heat-related illnesses. Emergency shelters are operating at capacity, with aid workers distributing food, water, and essential supplies to displaced families. In some cases, local law enforcement and military personnel are taking on firefighting duties to free up trained crews for the most dangerous tasks. Despite the extraordinary efforts, authorities admit that the fires are advancing in ways they have not experienced before, with speed and intensity that defy conventional containment tactics. The reality on the ground is one of constant triage, where saving lives takes priority over saving land. Experts and environmental scientists are increasingly clear that the wildfires devastating southern Europe are not isolated or freak occurrences, but part of a broader and worsening pattern linked directly to climate change. Rising global temperatures are increasing the frequency, duration, and severity of extreme heat events, creating conditions that make fires more likely to ignite and harder to control once they start. Long-term climate data shows that southern Europe has warmed significantly faster than the global average, with summer heat waves becoming both more intense and more prolonged. As the mercury climbs, vegetation dries out more quickly, transforming forests, grasslands, and farmland into highly combustible fuel sources. This warming trend is also altering precipitation patterns. Winters and springs are bringing less rainfall to many parts of the Mediterranean. What rain does fall often arrives in short, heavy bursts rather than steady, soaking showers. Such changes mean the soil retains less moisture, and plants have less time to recover from drought stress before summer heat arrives. Over time, this cycle weakens ecosystems, making them less resilient to the outbreak of fire. Once a blaze begins, dry conditions, combined with the increasingly common heat dome weather phenomenon, allow it to spread with unusual speed and ferocity. The connection between climate change and wildfire behavior is also evident in the shifting fire seasons. In countries like Spain, Portugal, and Greece, what was once considered a defined fire season, lasting a few months, has now stretched into much of the year. Fires are starting earlier in the spring and burning later into the autumn, reducing the window for preventive work, such as clearing brush, maintaining fire breaks, training response crews. This expansion of the danger period has left emergency services in a near-permanent state of readiness, depleting budgets and exhausting personnel before the most intense months have even begun. Scientific studies reinforce these observations. The European Commission's Joint Research Center has reported that climate change is amplifying the risk of mega fires that burn vast areas in a short time, a phenomenon already observed in North America and Australia. These events are no longer rare in Europe, with several Mediterranean countries now facing fires of a scale once considered exceptional. The heat wave currently gripping southern Europe is a case in point, with temperatures shattering records across multiple nations. Meteorologists warn that without significant action to curb greenhouse gas emissions, such extremes could become commonplace within decades. Beyond the physical science, there is also a growing recognition of the socio-economic dimension of this climate link. Rural depopulation, driven in part by economic pressures, leaves vast stretches of land unmanaged and overgrown, adding to the available fuel load. At the same time, urban expansion into previously wild areas increases the number of people and properties in high-risk zones. This combination of environmental and human factors, all exacerbated by a warming climate, ensures that when fires ignite, the consequences are far more destructive than in the past. The current crisis has therefore become a stark illustration of how climate change does not just raise temperatures, but reshapes entire ecosystems and communities in ways that make catastrophic wildfires both more likely and more deadly. The scale and intensity of the current wildfire crisis in southern Europe have made it clear that reactive measures alone are no longer sufficient. What is urgently needed is a comprehensive, forward-looking strategy to address both the causes and consequences of such disasters. Strengthened cross-border cooperation is a critical first step. Wildfires do not respect national borders. Many of the Mediterranean's most vulnerable regions share similar environmental and climatic conditions. Coordinated systems for sharing firefighting equipment, personnel, intelligence can ensure that resources are deployed rapidly where they are needed most. Joint training programs could prepare multinational teams to work seamlessly together, overcoming the logistical challenges that arise when different countries respond to the same emergency. Smarter land management is another pillar of effective action. Decades of rural depopulation have left vast areas untended, with overgrown vegetation creating ideal conditions for fires to spread. Policies that encourage sustainable farming, reforestation with fire-resistant species, and regular clearing of combustible brush can reduce fuel loads and slow the advance of flames. Controlled burns, carried out under safe conditions, can also be used to create natural fire breaks, though they require careful planning and public communication to avoid panic. Integrating modern technology, such as satellite monitoring, drones, AI-based fire risk prediction models, can help authorities detect hotspots before they erupt into uncontrollable infernos. Investment in resilience is equally important. Communities in high-risk areas must be equipped not just to respond to fires, but to withstand and recover from them. This means building or retrofitting homes to be more fire resistant, designing urban layouts that include defensible green belts, and ensuring critical infrastructure, such as power lines and water systems, are protected from heat and smoke damage. Public awareness campaigns can play a vital role in teaching residents how to prepare for evacuation, protect property, and reduce ignition risks during extreme weather events. Adaptation efforts must go hand in hand with decisive action on climate change. Reducing greenhouse gas emissions is the only way to address the root driver of the increasingly severe heat waves that set the stage for these wildfires. National governments and the European Union will need to commit to more ambitious climate targets, accelerate the shift to renewable energy, and phase out fossil fuels more rapidly. International cooperation is key, as the problem extends far beyond Europe's borders and requires a global reduction in emissions to slow the warming trend. Finally, long-term planning must recognize that fire is not an occasional threat, but a recurring feature of the new climate reality. Budgeting for year-round firefighting capacity, funding research into fire ecology, embedding climate risk assessments into all levels of policymaking will help ensure that the lessons of this summer's destruction are not forgotten. What is at stake is more than the preservation of forests or homes. It is the safety, stability, and resilience of entire communities across the Mediterranean basin. The fires raging across southern Europe are more than a seasonal disaster. They are a warning written in smoke and flame. If we meet this crisis with only short-term fixes, we'll return with greater force. But with bold cooperation, smarter land stewardship, and unwavering commitment to slowing climate change, we can turn this moment of destruction into a turning point for resilience and survival.